Kratos, the journey forward is perilous.
The Oracle spoke of Pandora's box. Can it be real?
It is the most powerful weapon a mortal can wield.
And with such a weapon, I could defeat Ares.
And so it is hidden well, far across the desert of lost souls. You must find the Sirens, Kratos. Only they can guide you to Kronos, the Titan. Zeus has commanded him to wander the desert endlessly, the Temple of Pandora chained to his back. Your journey begins here. Pray it leads you back to Athens.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Let's Play God of War minus the boy. That's right, this is the 2005 original God of War. Welcome back, everybody. Last time, we journeyed from Athens to Pandora's Temple, and this episode, we're here. We're at Pandora's Temple, and we are going to be here for a while. If there is any possible complaint that could ever possibly be levied on a game like God of War, it is that the amount of environments that you are in, for the first game anyway, for this original 2005 first title, are pretty limited. You have the awesome Aegean Sea cold open, you have Athens for a little while, then you have the transitionary journey through the sewers and through the desert to get here to this desert temple, basically, and now we're going to be here in this temple for 5 episodes. 5 episodes. They're not short episodes either. This is where the biggest chunk of the game is going to take place, in this temple. So get used to seeing this place and get used to me referring to Pandora's Temple as a location, because we are going to get to know every square inch of this giant place before it's all said and done. Because the box is hidden really, really, really fucking deeply inside this place. It's kind of crazy. And we'll get into that too, the craziness of designing a place like this, and how Pathos Verdes III, the chief architect who designed all of this, and we saw his name briefly at the end of the last episode, how he lost his goddamn mind building this whole place for Zeus and the rest of the Olympians. For now, though, we actually have to get inside the temple proper, and for that, we're going to have a cutscene first.
So, you think you can conquer the Temple of the Gods, do you? It's never been done, you know. Sooner or later, the Harpies will bring what's left of you back for me to burn. The gods hid Pandora's box in here, so no mortal would ever claim its power. And yet, year after year, I open the gate for more and more soldiers and place more and more bodies on these pyres. If I were you, I'd leave now. But I can see you are determined. Very well. May the gods grant you strength to conquer the perils that lay before you. Good luck, Spartan. It's always the same. Madmen and fools seeking glory. I know, as you can see by my somewhat disheveled state. I was the first to attempt the temple, and the first to die. The gods punished me for my failure, and now I must tend to all who have followed me, and perished. The architect who built this temple was a zealot. He lived only to serve the gods, but went mad trying. The rumor is that he's still alive, still inside, still trying to appease the gods who abandoned him years ago.
Oh boy. So yeah, we got our work cut out for us. We've done impossible things before, but this sounds like it's going to be exciting. exceptionally difficult. And considering the fact that we're going to be in here for 5 goddamn episodes, approximately about 3 hours of game time, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Anyway, let's actually get into the temple itself. The way has been opened. Now we can actually, move forward. But of course, we have new variants of Cyclopes to stop our progress. So, I mentioned in the last episode how this part of the game, once we actually get to Pandora's Temple, the second half of the game basically, this is when things get difficult. And that's true. It starts off with these Cyclopes. The Pandora's Temple variants of most anything that we've already encountered so far, the Pandora's Temple variant is one of the toughest versions of the enemy you're going to fight in the game. There is one area after this that you're going to be fighting enemies that are even tougher than what you're fighting here in Pandora's Temple, but basically get used to fighting Pandora's Temple variants of enemies, and get used to the fact that they are going to be exceptionally difficult, exceptionally damaged, spongy, exceptionally powerful enemies to fight that you're going to really want to prioritize getting your Blades of Chaos to level 5 as soon as you can. It takes me a while to get them to level 5 because obviously that's a big, red orb commitment, but the sooner you can get your Blades of Chaos to level 5, the better, because the enemies in the temple are almost completely unmanageable without level 5 Blades of Chaos. I mean, without the level 5 blades, you can use your other tricks like Medusa's Gaze, Poseidon's Rage, Zeus's Fury, all that good stuff, like I'm doing right now a little bit. But you're really going to want to prioritize getting your Blades of Chaos to level 5 as soon as possible, because level 3 is pretty good for everything leading up to the temple. But once you get to the temple and you start facing off against all the, temple variants of the enemies, you're really, really not going to want to. You're really not going to want to fight these guys with level 3 blades anymore. It is terrible, and an ordeal from which you will die from many, many times, as I die many, many times. This is the first episode where I'm going to start dying in this Let's Play because things get very, very difficult. I'm speeding up here because this is the last Cyclops, and it's just a very boring, watching me do the square, square, triangle thing until I get the QTE, of which I think I messed up quite a few times. I don't know what was going on with this particular QTE, but the window to actually hit the buttons was so minuscule for some reason that I wasn't able to hit the QTE. But thankfully, as opposed to previous God of War games where messing up a QTE could, spell your doom because it does so much damage. Like in Chains of Olympus, for example, messing up QTE does so much damage to Kratos. In the original God of War, thankfully, it doesn't do that much damage to you. So it's okay to mess up QTEs because you're not going to lose like half your health by messing up a QTE once or anything like that. Regardless, we have killed these powerful Cyclopes, and now we can actually enter the temple, of which we will be spending basically 3 hours in. The game is about 7 to 7.5 hours in length, depending on how good you are at the game. And 3 to 3.5 of those hours, possibly 4, is you in this temple. We've also collected our first Phoenix Feather, the first of our last set of 6. I talked briefly before in a previous episode about how plentiful the white chests were in Athens, because they were. Not anymore. We're still going to be getting plenty of white chests here and there, but they are not as plentiful as they were in Athens. Not at all. It's going to take a while before we can actually get 6 Phoenix Feathers to fully upgrade our magic one last time to... Yeah, it's just going to take a while to get the last 5 Phoenix Feathers at this point, because while there are plenty of white chests in Pandora's Temple, a lot of them only have red orbs, and they are much more spaced out than they were in Athens. It is going to take much longer to get one magic upgrade here, as opposed to all the other upgrades that we got when we were in Athens itself. The game stops holding your hand at this point. Even these wraiths, they're not that bad. You can still block everything that they do, but they do a lot more damage, because these are the Pandora's Temple variants of of rates. Everything here is the Pandora's Temple variant, except for those archers that we killed because they were unarmed, because they were unarmored. Yeah, prepare yourself, because this is when the game actually gets quite difficult. This is the difficulty spike. This is when you're really, really, really going to have to hope you understand how to fight most of the enemy variants, because we've been introduced to almost all the enemy variants at this point, and we've had a chance to practice on how to fight them in Athens, and now it's really going to put us through our paces here. And of course, here we have our first official message from Pathos Verdes III, telling us that ultimate power can be ours, but it's only for one worthy person. I think we're pretty worthy, though, considering all the shit we've done before in Ascension and in Chains of Olympus, and Kratos' shining career as a Spartan captain before that. I think we're up to the challenge. Welcome to the Rings of Pandora. We're going to be here 3 times. The way Pandora's Temple is divided, and the way that we're going to be dividing up the videos, is the main section of Pandora's Temple, which is the section we're in now, is divided up into 3 distinct challenges, which will become clear once we enter our first challenge how it's divided up. But basically, there's 3 big challenge areas filled to the brim with combat, with puzzles, with combat puzzles, everything you could hope for in a dangerous Legend of Zelda-esque temple. 3 distinct challenges, so each video we're going to be covering 1 challenge. This video is all about getting to the temple and taking on our first challenge. The next video is going to be all about the second challenge area. The third video is going to be the third challenge area. And then the fourth video, we're going to move on to what comes after the challenges in the temple. Because finishing the challenges is all well and good, but that's only the first step to completing Pandora's Temple. So the first 3 videos are all just about working our way through this main chunk of the temple. It's not the only chunk of the temple. There's still a lot more after we finish what's down here, but that's the plan. Each video, 1 big challenge area. Each video, 1 chunk of the temple completed. It's going to take us a while. Some of these videos are going to be longer than others. There is one particular video coming up that is going to be 1 hour in length, because it's just so long, that section. This temple also houses our second boss, and that's another common complaint about the original God of War. The lack of bosses in this game as a whole. So far, we've just had our awesome Hydra battle at the beginning, and then, that's it. There was no boss at the end of Athens. And it's going to be a while before we encounter the boss of Pandora's Temple. Here, though, we're in a situation where we're being presented with things that are going to be important later on, but we can't actually do anything with. We're going to have to delve deeply into the belly of this temple to actually get the stuff that we need and prove our worth for this goddamn box. The main gimmick of the rings is that you can actually move the rings around yourself to reveal other rooms that you can explore, which is what we're doing right now. This is one of the rooms you can visit. This room in particular is hidden behind 2 muse keys. These are keys that we can find throughout the challenge areas in this first giant chunk of Pandora's Temple. If you've managed to find the 2 muse keys and come back here eventually, you will be able to receive your 4th health upgrade and your 4th magic upgrade. So if you were wondering after collecting the 18 Gorgon's Eyes and Phoenix Feathers why you're not at completely full health or completely full magic, that's why. It's because your final health and magic upgrades are hidden behind that door with the muse keys. For now, though, we're going to meet another god and get another power, so see you in a second.
Artemis.
Kratos, the gods demand more of you. You have learned to use the blades of chaos well, but they alone will not carry you to the end of your task. I offer you the very blade I used to slay a titan. Take this gift and use it to complete your quest. Take this weapon, Kratos. Take this power and use it to defeat your enemies. Go with the gods, Kratos. Go forth in the name of Olympus.
Yeah, we're not going to use that, ever. There it is. Hope you like seeing it. I know speedrunners can use this thing really well. I can't, so I'm not going to be using it. That's one of the only times you'll be seeing that thing. I'm not going to upgrade it either. There's no point in the way that I play to bother trying the Blades of Artemis, so, yeah. I'm just showing you right now all the stuff about the Blades of Artemis because I'm not really going to use them for anything, really. Yeah, there's the moves that you can use if you want. The only thing the upgrades do is just make the blades more powerful. And, yeah. That's it for that. And welcome to the Challenge of Atlas. This is kind of weird that Atlas gets his own challenge in Pandora's Temple, considering where we left him in Chains of Olympus. But I guess that's just a retcon of the series, that Atlas became more of an antagonistic force for Kratos, as compared to what I guess was originally intended, where he was just kind of this mythological being that we only hear about but don't see. I don't know. I mean, it's the same kind of retcon where they say that Kronos is the last living Titan when we clearly saw Atlas in Chains of Olympus. I mean, it's not a great life, but he is technically living and breathing as he's holding up the world from Elysium, from where the world pillar used to be. So, I don't know. It's kind of weird that he gets his own challenge, but here we are, the Challenge of Atlas. We begin by just fighting off some random mooks. These aren't even Pandora's Temple variants of the enemy, so you should have no trouble dealing with these undead soldiers. Of course, now you get the Medusas coming in, Gorgons coming in to join the fun. These are the Pandora's Temple variants of Gorgons. I would recommend magic, Poseidon's Rage, to make quick of work of them, to weaken them to the point to get them to QTE range. And then if you can, try to do the analog stick QTE to get some magic back from them every time you kill one. It's difficult to do because, again, the analog stick QTEs are kind of unintuitive, but if you manage to get it right, then, you know, good for you. You get some magic back, which you can use for more Poseidon's Rage, which you can use to weaken Gorgons further and do more QTEs to get more magic back, to do more Poseidon's Rage, and you know the cycle. Of course, when there's only one left, you shouldn't bother with magic. I don't do it here, but you should try to launch them up, because Gorgons, just like regular enemies, are pretty susceptible to being launched up in the air. And try to keep rolling anytime they do their gaze. But yeah, Gorgons are very susceptible to being launched into the air and just, you know, mash and circle like you would with other enemies. Now, these enemies here, these particular enemies with this particular kind of armor, get used to seeing these enemies a lot more, because these are the Pandora's Temple variants of enemies. These are the enemies with some of the strongest armor. These are the enemies that you're going to be facing for, you know, most of the rest of the game at this point. These Pandora Temple variants. In terms of their actual attacks, they're not that different from... They're not that different from regular enemies. They just do a hell of a lot more damage and, you know, can take a lot more damage before they die. So, exceptionally dangerous. And of course, after this, you just have to deal with some archers. These are unarmored archers, so also very easy to dispatch and deal with. I say that the game increases in difficulty a lot more at this point, and it does, but they do, you know, they don't just throw you into the deep end. They do ease you into it by still giving you some regular undead soldiers and some mythological creatures instead of just throwing the hordes of armored Pandora's Temple variant undead soldiers at you, which, Jesus, I hate when they start doing that. Also, fun bit of trivia that I was just looking up. Artemis had mentioned in the previous cutscene that the blade that we're not going to be using ever again was used to slay a Titan, but in actuality it was used to slay a giant. Which is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting that they retconned that. They decided to go with that. I guess it's just to build up more animosity between the gods and the Titans, which is a thing we also saw in Chains of Olympus, as we saw what Zeus had done to the Titans after oh, Jesus, that camera, after the war ended. Yeah, for some reason you have to slide down the rope from up there. Like that. Anyway, here we go. First difficult section of the temple, and of course it's difficult because it is a rope hanging combat section. Yay. Here we go. I die not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4. I die 4 times. So my first 4 deaths are from this rope hanging section. Before I go back down there again, I realized that my mistake for this whole rope climbing section was that I didn't go into it with full health. Enemies do so much damage to you on the rope climbing, on when you're climbing walls, that it's just, you really need to make a point of doing these sections with full health. And I was cocky enough to believe that I could do it without full health. So here I am paying for that with 4 deaths, and now I'm going with full health. If the enemies grab you instead of just attacking you, that's pretty good, because that means the other enemies that are hanging off ropes aren't going to try to attack you. If you grab an enemy, enemies on the ropes could still potentially attack you. But if enemies grab you, then you get this QTE where you have to mash the analog stick in one direction or another, and the enemies on the rope are not going to attack you anymore. That's why I got so lucky in this 5th attempt, because a lot of enemies grabbed on and latched onto Kratos, which meant that the other enemies that were like right next to me stopped attacking because they had to let the QTE play out. Again, if you grab enemies with your legs, with your powerful little legs, as Kratos is about to... Actually, no. Another enemy grabbed onto me, and thus the enemies have stopped attacking me. Which, again, I got super duper lucky. But if you grab onto enemies with your powerful legs, then, as so, then enemies that are hanging around nearby Kratos can still attack him while he's doing this. Enemies can still attack Kratos while he's doing that. So even though it is an instant kill to enemies, it's very dangerous to do because of just enemies attacking you while you're doing that. But if enemies latch onto you and try to throw you off the rope, then, that's not going to happen anymore. Enemies are not going to attack you, and they're going to leave you alone while you do it, which is why I got extremely lucky in this 5th attempt. Yeah. And that's it for that section. Difficult. You take a lot of damage. Very little room for error, and it's all kind of RNG if the enemies are going to latch onto you or just attack you. But for doing this whole little challenge, we get this nice little shield with Hades on it. That's nice. Anyway, with that, we now have to escape this area, and of course, what's a good escape without a big spiked wall coming in after you? Classic temple trap. If you want to stop that spiked wall, you just have to kill all the enemies. Very easy to do, in the beginning anyway, because it's just a whole bunch of unarmored AG and C versions of the enemies, but eventually the Pandora's Temple super armored versions are going to come into play as well. When they do, and if you don't have the opportunity to grab onto an unarmored enemy to toss them around and throw them, doing damage to everybody, then you just need to do Poseidon's Rage to try and get them to back off. If you run out of magic, then you can just use Zeus's Lightning Bolt, because again, Zeus's Fury costs almost no magic at all, so that's great. And at this point, I only have these couple of unarmored enemies left, and I went so quickly that I have plenty of time to kill them the slow way, which is just launching them in the air like that. And I also have free refills on magic and health. Something I'm noticing here as I'm doing the commentary, and something I also point out in the next episode in my edits, the music. You could potentially, you might end up hearing it. I'm gonna make it more obvious in the next episode when I actually, make edits to have you listen to what's happening. But there is a weird glitch in the PlayStation 3 version of the game, a weird bug, I should say, in the PlayStation 3 version remaster of the game, where the standard Rings of Pandora music never disappears as you play. Like all the combat music, any other music that plays in Pandora's Temple, the basic Rings of Pandora music always plays as you explore the temple, unless you turn it off and reset the game. It's just going to keep doing this forever, playing the basic Rings of Pandora music underneath any other tracks that happen to be playing at the moment, whether it's a combat theme, whether it's a different exploratory theme, an underwater theme, a boss theme. The Rings of Pandora theme is always going to be playing in the background for some reason. It's a weird thing. I wish it didn't exist, but it's a very minor thing, and it's worth it so I can play this on the PlayStation 3 as opposed to the original PS2 version. You've killed 2 more Gorgons. We're also going to kill 2 more archers here. Basically, this whole challenge of Atlas, the first part of the challenge requires us to get through a door to Kratos' left that we saw briefly. We're not actually going to interact with that door just yet. In order to get past that door, we need 2 shields. One from Hades and and another shield. I forget who is on that shield. I think it's Poseidon who's on the other shield, potentially. I don't know. Either way, this is an example of another wide linear area of God of War, where you have this big area and 2 potential paths you can go through, one of which leads you to the Shield of Hades, which was that rope hanging section, and the other section that leads you to the second shield. And you can do them in any order you want, and thankfully this area is so small that you'll figure out pretty quickly that you have to explore both areas to get both shields anyway, so it's not too egregious here. Again, there's a few areas later on in this game where the wide linearity is kind of I messed up there. Where the wide linearity is kind of is just a little bit unwelcome. This is not one of those areas because this area is so small that you're going to figure out pretty quickly that you're going to have to explore all of it to get the 2 things you need to open the door to move on. So this is an example of wide linear. That's okay because again, it's just so small that it's not really a big issue. Here I'm speeding up because we know how to fight these enemies. These enemies are not interesting anymore, and they're just going to throw a lot of these super armored Pandora's Temple variants at you, so I decided to just speed through that because we know how they work. We're doing the Chains of Olympus method. We launch enemies up in the air, we mash circle, we win. You also got some free chests here, so I was okay. I was fine playing kind of risky there because there was no real danger to what I was doing. Here's our second shield. Now we're going to find out exactly what god is depicted on that shield. I thought it was Poseidon, but it might be somebody else. It might be Zeus. I forgot though, so we're going to find out right now. Oh yes, it's Zeus, not Poseidon. Okay. Cool. Again, Zeus depicted very differently in this game as to how he's going to look and sound in future God of War titles. Not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, it's the first game. They didn't know exactly the main direction they would be going in. They had a rough idea, but, you know, pretty normal to not fully know what you're doing, to not fully understand how big something's going to be, and plan for a franchise. It's a big mistake that a lot of movie studios and even game companies are making, where they're planning for franchises before just making sure that the first title is good. And this is a case where, you know, care went into making sure that this title was good, and then the franchise that came after it, you know, they retconned a few things. They they elaborate on some other stuff, you know, just to make this tie into everything else, but not go so far as to set up a franchise already when they didn't know that this was actually going to be good or not. So I respect that. We got some more Pandora's Temple variants, enemies here. This is another wide linear area. Now that you're past that door, you got to that saw blade room. Technically, you could solve the puzzle of the saw blade room first, if you wanted to, and open and get past the door that was being protected on the far end of that. But I decided to go to the right first because this is an example of another wide linear area where you could go and solve the saw blade room first, but doing so would just reveal that you need something from where I'm going to actually get past the final door of that area and actually move on. So another example of wide linear area. It's a little bit more annoying in this case because it's a little bit bigger of an area, and if you go down the wrong path, you're going to go down the wrong path for a while before you realize that you actually have to backtrack and do what I'm doing right now first in order to actually get what you need to, you know, to actually finish up the challenge. And, you know, in universe, it makes sense why it would start to get pretty unfair here, because this is supposed to be the most difficult thing any mortal could ever possibly do, and so far none have actually done. So in universe, I get it, but from a gameplay design, I'm not a huge fan of wide linearity areas. I think God of War does them pretty well, but I do prefer it in the other titles when they don't do it at all, when they stop doing that. Got our second Phoenix Feather. 4 to go. Again, it's going to be a while. Also speeding up here because unlike in other God of War titles where they actually make the red orbs absorb into a power up faster, here it's pretty slow, so I decided to just speed up the upgrade process. Getting our blades up to level 4. Again, you want to prioritize getting to level 5. I'm not going to do the level 5 thing immediately. I probably should have prioritized getting them to level 5 immediately, but now we're going to hit a infinite red orb glitch. This is the red orb glitch I like to do. So basically you stand here, let the harpy attack you, and just do a square triangle thing where you can try to get them to die on top of the ladder that you see right behind Kratos. If you can get the harpy to die right behind the ladder on top of Kratos, then this happens. You can just hang on the wall underneath him, just stay there forever and get all the red orbs you could possibly need to upgrade your Blades of Chaos, to upgrade your Zeus's Fury, your Medusa's Gaze, Poseidon's Rage, anything and everything you want to upgrade. That is the best infinite orb glitch of the game. I like doing that infinite orb glitch sometimes. For this main playthrough though, for you know, recording purposes, I'm not going to actually do the red orb glitch, but you know, it's there. If you wanted to do that, just kill the harpy at the top of the ladder and it should just spawn red orbs forever. So that's nice. And again, that's one of 2 main areas where you can do an infinite red orb glitch. The other area being back in the Temple of the Oracle the first time we visited. There's going to be a card in that video that tells you how to actually do that particular infinite red orb glitch if you wanted to. The one here is better because you get more red orbs per minute as compared to the one in the Temple of the Oracle. So if you wanted to get red orbs a little bit faster, you do the one here as opposed to the one there. Now we're in another climbing section. Rambled my way through half of that, but unfortunately we do have to sit through the rest of this, which is such a slow process. Again, first God of War does so much right, but the climbing sections are absolutely terrible. The rope hanging sections too. I'm almost dead, and it's not really a real combat challenge. This is just a stupid wall climbing thing. Ugh. I hate it so much. Not a fan. Thankfully, this is the hardest part of the challenge of Atlas. I know I died 4 times to the rope hanging section, and that was difficult too. But this is the longest, most tedious, difficult part. And I was very happy I didn't die here at all, so. Once we're done with that, that means no more fucking rock climbing for a while, thankfully. Thank God. We got a chain come down, that's cool. get ourselves a health refill. I think that chest actually refills itself after you do the challenge of this room. So feel free to fill up on your magic or probably health before entering this particular challenge. This particular challenge is a timed combat. If you have Rage of the Gods, use them because you have a very limited amount of time to deal with the enemies here. And there's a motorcycle outside being very, very loud and very, very annoying. And you have shield enemies here. I think this is one of the first times you encounter shield enemies. You also encounter them in Athens, but this is the first time they're truly annoying in this entire challenge. Basically doing a square triangle combo breaks the shield, or if you're in Rage of the Gods, you can just do enough damage to them anyway that they will die immediately, letting you solve this safely and quickly. And yeah, that chest does refill itself. That's cool. Confused by what happened just then and there, don't worry about it. I was showing you that the music glitch from that I was discussing before. I thought I was going to actually show the edits in a different video, but I guess I actually put them here. I didn't realize. The music glitch, where the Rings of Pandora's theme plays underneath anything and everything that you do in this area. I don't know why. I don't know why that exists. That's apparently only a thing in the PlayStation 3 version. But it is a thing that exists, so, unfortunately, if you play the PlayStation 3 version, it's going to be a little bit messed up because of that. But otherwise, this is a perfect remaster of a classic game. Anyway, now that we've gotten the handle from that timed combat challenge room, it's time for us to solve the puzzle of the saw blade room, which is a time challenge. We have to pull both levers and make it to the exit before the first lever actually, before the first lever resets itself, which means being unafraid and just running as quickly as possible. I wasn't even bothering to try and time the saw blades. I was just going as fast as I could so I can get to the end of this as quickly as possible, because if you try to time it, you're going to waste too much time trying to determine how long it takes for the saw blades to pass by. So it's just better if you don't try to time it and just run for it. There's a pretty high chance that you're gonna make it. So if you just run for it, you'll get past that. You'll get past the saw blade challenge pretty easily. At this point, we reach the final area of the Challenge of Atlas. In this area, we start off with some combat, of course. Some Pandora's Temple variants of Minotaurs. I think the first of two Minotaur types that we will be seeing in the temple. Again, as I said before, with the wide linear design, you could technically reach this area first before doing the wall climbing section. That I don't like, and I don't think anybody likes from the original God of War. But if you were to do that, you would notice that in front of the statue of Atlas, which doesn't look anything at all like Atlas as we saw him in Chains of Olympus, in front of the statue of Atlas is that glowing pole. And we'll talk about the glowing pole in a second, I guess. Because behind the statue, you get our first Muse key. Our first secret chest that has a Muse key. Anyway, that pole, you have to attach the handle that we got from the other challenge. If you come here first, you're not going to have the handle, and you're going to be forced to backtrack because you can't open the door and return to the saw blade room. You are going to be forced to backtrack and go through the wall climbing section and get the handle and then come back here. So nothing's stopping you from doing all of this first, but it's recommended you get the handle first in the direction that I went, because otherwise you're just going to have to do some backtracking. Again, wide linear, something God of War 1 does a lot more than any of the others. I think God of War 2 does it quite a bit too. Does a decent amount too, but God of War 1 does it, and it's... I forgot about that. Yeah, there was a weird moment there where Kratos and that one undead soldier just kind of stared each other down before the undead soldier attacked. It's kind of funny. I don't know. I put some Western music there. Anyway, the wide linear format of God of War 1 is something that I do kind of like, but there are parts where it kind of overstates its welcome. This is not one of them. The two potential wide linear backtracking things that you can do in Challenge of Atlas are not that bad, just because it's not that large of an area. Again, in 2 videos time, I believe, it's going to get egregious enough where, you know, I'll start talking about it more as a problem, as opposed to just a thing that this game is doing compared to Ascension and Chains of Olympus from before. For now, it's just a thing, but there will be 2 particular sections where it becomes kind of egregious. For now, though, this whole thing that I'm doing right here as Kratos, you don't have to do all this to finish the area. Well, no, technically you do. What I'm doing to get the chests, obviously, you don't have to finish to finish the area, but you do actually have to come up here. What I did incorrectly was I forgot to turn the fucking handle. That's what I wanted to say. Not that you shouldn't come up here. Obviously, you have to come up here because you have to pull the lever here to actually activate the contraption and open the door, but I made a mistake of not turning the handle first, which, whoops. I'm also going to show off here that I missed quite a few red orb chests, and one of them is going to be right behind where I'm standing right now, obviously. I'm just showing off that I missed quite a few red orb chests. Just showing off some brain scratch footage so you can see where 2 of them were in this room. But like I said, I missed a total of like 15 red orb chests throughout my whole time playing. Playing this game. So that's just 2, but you're gonna see more in the collectibles guide. Kind of weird how this temple that apparently took many, many decades of hard labor had a challenge of Atlas. Understanding that the myth of Atlas holding up the world was a thing that hasn't happened yet, but they have the statue of him, who doesn't look like him at all, holding up the giant boulder, you know, representing the earth. So, again, that's a retcon. Could just be the gods saw the future, knew that this was going to happen, whatever. Anyway, we have reached the first of the rewards for completing challenges. In this case, we have reached Pathos Verdes III's son, one of his children's graves. His family all died in his attempt to create this temple for the gods. He was loyal for quite a while, but eventually, like many people in this universe, he grew to resent the gods for what they had forced him to waste his life on. With his son's head acquired, though, we now have something for that skull totem, for that skull-shaped hole that we saw earlier. Now we need to go and actually place this key in there so we can move forward to the next challenge. Thank you all very much for watching this video. Next time, we're going to move on to the next challenge of Pandora's Temple. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the temple itself, about Pathos Verdes III, his children, how his life was all just wasted away for this. Yeah. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
The wrecked bodies of those who had gone in search of Pandora's box lay before him, and at once Kratos knew who was responsible. For this was not the first time he'd seen the ruin Ares and his minions had left in their wake. Kratos had experienced it firsthand years before. The youngest and boldest captain in the Spartan army, Kratos inspired fierce loyalty in his men. It had always been enough to carry them through any battle, until this day. The barbarians to the east numbered in the thousands, and descended on the Spartans without mercy. The battle lasted near hours. The discipline and training of the Spartans did little to stem the tide of the merciless barbarians. The soldiers faced a massacre, while their young captain faced the end of his brilliant career and his life. But to Kratos, victory was worth any price, even his soul.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours.
That desperate call for aid would come to haunt Kratos for all his days.
By the gods, what have I become?